Welcome, everybody, to Football Discussion Daily. My name is Joe. I'm here with the co-host,
TGO.
CGO, or George. Today is the 3rd of February, 2026, and we are discussing the League Cup semifinal leg 2 between Arsenal and Chelsea. Arsenal went to Stamford Bridge a couple weeks ago and won 3-2. This is the return leg, and it was in North London, where Arsenal's home stadium. Arsenal ended up winning 1-0. Their one goal was more or less the last kick of the match and the goal was by former Chelsea player Kai Havertz. This game there's a couple moments we're going to talk about. First off, there was an incident late in the game, but before the goal where Chebala had a tackle on Martinelli it was in the box. It could have been a penalty. We'll talk through that. There was the lineup for Chelsea, which a lot of people were calling too conservative. And I'll throw that question over to you, George, first. Was Chelsea too conservative in this game?
That's the truth. Chelsea were very conservative in this game. You expect that a team that lost the first leg at Stamford Bridge will come out blazing in this return leg because they needed the win for them to overturn the first leg outcome. But they came into the game with a tactical formation of 3-5-2. Leon Delap was off in that game, very sloppy. I didn't see much he did in the game. And the reality is that kind of tactical formation is more like you are more defensive, more conservative. And you expect that from a team who has probably won the first tie. But in this case, you lost the first tie. You should come out and attack because you have nothing to lose. But I was surprised the coach had to start with that pattern. And that made the game very boring because Arsenal had not they know they already are ahead. All they needed to do was just manage the game and see the game through. That was all they needed to do. So Chelsea's approach to the game, especially in the first half, made Arsenal to just relax themselves. They were just having fun. That made the game so boring. The game wasn't too interesting. I expected more. And in the second half, when we had Palmer and Estaval coming in, at least you see that at least there was some kind of bites in the Chelsea's attack. And that made the game a little bit interesting in the second half. And then Chelsea put so much pressure on themselves towards the ending of the game. And that was what resulted in that last goal because they knew that they just needed to get a goal. If not, they will be out. By the time they were doing that, it was late. And then we saw Arsenal make a counter. And then that resulted in the goal Kai Havertz scored, which was the last kick of the game.
George, I don't think I disagree with you on that first half. First off, on paper, Arsenal is a better team than Chelsea. They're more talented, they have more stability, the coach is better, they have more experience. Just across the board, Arsenal's a better team. I think that going into this game and saying we're going to stay in this game as long as we can and try and really push the last 15 minutes and put our best offensive players on in the last 15 minutes is not a bad way to approach this game. I do feel like Chelsea basically completely lacked urgency the last 15 or 20 minutes too, which I think was the issue. I feel like the first 45, not terribly exciting game, and the subs, the lineup was very conservative, but and even the lineup, even the changes made complete sense to me, but the play style of Chelsea did not seem to change. They were still unable to create something. It seemed to me that they lacked intensity towards the end of the game as well. And that they did kind of expose themselves without creating chances, which is kind of the opposite of what pushing at the end of the game would do. But Cole Palmer, in my opinion, is their best offensive player, and Esteval has honestly been great in the limited minutes I've seen him this season. But what they didn't have throughout most of the game was a wide winger who could attack players. Arsenal, I do feel like their fullbacks are one of the more weaker spots in the team. But I do feel like it's always going to be challenging once they lost 3-2 at home.
I knew it's going to be very difficult for Chelsea because since Arteta came in, since he took over as the coach of Arsenal, he has only lost just 2 games to Chelsea. He has played about 13 Premier League games with Chelsea. He has won 7, drew 4, and only lost two. And those two he lost, I think one was in December 29th of 2019. About
So
9 days after he was appointed the
who was the
coach
coach?
of
Who was the
Arsenal.
coach of Chelsea at the time? Was it Frank Lampard?
I think it was Lampard. That's the
Oh,
first one,
wow,
and then the second time when he played Chelsea, when he lost to Chelsea was I think August of 2021. Thomas Tuchel was the person
Chucho.
who was in charge. That was the game where Chelsea defeated Arsenal 2-0 at the Emirates, where we had Reece James and Romelu Lukaku scoring those two goals. Since then, Chelsea has never defeated Arsenal in any competitive game, which is which that is already a psychological advantage for the Arsenal team, considering that in times of squad depth, they have a better squad depth compared to Chelsea. They have more experienced players compared to Chelsea, so everything works in their favor. So I wasn't really expecting Chelsea to go to Emirates and then get a win. I knew it's going to be very difficult, especially when I realized that players like Rhys James, who is an experienced player, and Pedro Neto are not fit for the game. I knew it's going to be very, very difficult for them.
George. Honestly, like I really don't like in the Premier League how players are rested for a semifinal. Reece James, I understand you have to manage Reece James minutes because he's one of the best right backs in the world when he's healthy. But he plays like a 35-year-old player where you can't. He's great, but you just can't play him 90 minutes twice a week. This is the game you rest him for, the semifinal. You put Malo Gusto at right back and Reece James in the 3-5-2. It's a much more dangerous formation, but they played him full 90 against Napoli and I think 81 against minutes against Crystal Palace. I saw, and they had to rest him on Saturday and today. So that was an interesting choice. Second question, George. Also, I'll say there's a game under Sarri where I think it was under Sarri or Conte maybe where Chelsea played against Man City and they were down 2 or 3-0, and Conte was just like, you know what, guys, don't even try to attack. Let's just lose this game 2 or 3-0, and that's how I felt Chelsea were at certain points in this game. I know that Rosenier doesn't tell his team that, but just that same type of like, let's just pass it from whoever's furthest up on the high right to the fullback to the center back and make this giant U passing back pattern back and forth and back and forth. And that is just not exciting as a viewer. Second question, George. That Chalobah tackle on Martinelli. To me, it looked like Chalobah made this great tackle. And the ball, just due to bad luck on Chalobah's part, happened to, and Chalobah was down. Martinelli actually stayed on his feet after the great tackle. The ball actually looked like Martinelli could still get to it, and then Chalobah clipped Martinelli after the great tackle. That's how it looked like to me. I felt it was a penalty. What were your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it was a penalty because if you look at it, it's more like something that happened accidentally because Charlie has already gotten hold of the ball already, but somehow he was able to have contact with Martinelli. I think those were the things the referee considered, and then they decided because this was a match that the VAR was also part of this of this game. I think from the semi-final stage of the League Cup, most times VAR are always being used for that stage. So they reviewed it and they realized that it wasn't something. If they have given a penalty, to be too harsh to give a penalty for such kind of incident. So I don't think it was a penalty.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
better Arsenal won the way they won the game than giving them that penalty. If they had
Yes.
given them that penalty and they've won through that means, I think a lot of controversies would have happened in the game. So it was better
Yeah.
they won the way they won. At least any Chelsea fan will realize, no, Arsenal deserve to go through. That is the truth because they were the better team, if you ask me.
Yeah. It is difficult. I mean, and I think it would have made the game more exciting maybe because Chelsea might have pushed more, which I think on a game match like today where Arteta had basically figured Chelsea out, I think it would have led to more Arsenal goals. But the possibility of a Chelsea scoring a goal might have been more. I think the players might have had a better mentality there. Um, I actually Rosenior had a quote after the game that I thought was indicative of maybe poor mentality, where he was saying basically we had to be conservative. We couldn't push until the last 25 minutes because Arsenal were so good. I felt it was a poor mentality too from him after the game.
Yeah,
Um, Even if you feel that deep down, which I know these managers do, like I feel like it hurts your players to say that mentally. Like I'm a Brentford fan. Deep down, I know that like you can't go into Liverpool or Chelsea or United and expect to win. But like you can't tell the players that you got to play. Here's our path to victory. I believe in you guys. Let's go. I feel like a manager has to frame
exactly.
things that way
Yeah,
publicly.
because look at when Manchester United went to Emirates. Now, before then, Emirates was seen as a fortress for the Gunners. But Manchester United went there and they were very determined. They came out and played and they got victory. So sometimes you need to psych up your players and let them know they can get victory. Remember, even the game against Napoli. Napoli hasn't lost in that stadium. I think the last time they lost there, it seems it was 2024, December. That was the last time Napoli lost in their home ground. But Chelsea went there and they were very determined and then they got victory. Probably the reason why Chelsea couldn't get that win was the fact that Rosenoir was in charge when they lost the first leg of the game. So the fear factor was already there. Probably if he hadn't played them before the game, maybe he would have spoken to the players, he would have motivated them to go all out and get victory. From the start of the game, I knew no, if you continue this way, you don't look like a team that wants to win. Because if you look at it, you have nothing to lose. You've already lost the first leg. So put in everything. If you lose, and just you're out of the competition. It's better. So for me, they would have approached the game with high intensity from the beginning of the game. And who knows, they might have gotten maybe one or two goals before Arsenal will organize themselves. The game is over. But they approached the game and it was as if there was nothing really much at stake. It was as if they've already accepted that they are out. That was
Like
the
I said,
attitude I saw.
the execution I don't think was great, but I feel like the overall um, approach wasn't overly conservative. Maybe like like specific instructions in terms of how late they really pushed and how long they waited for it. I felt like I might have disagreed with, but I think that Rosenier has already done some great things in Premier League, and I think obviously knows more about the sport and his players than I do. And but I do feel like it must be disappointing as a fan though. But
If
I,
you look at the performance of Liam Delap in that game, you see that he was really off in that game. So you ask yourself,
I told you, I'm not super impressed by Delap in general. Like, I feel like Chelsea sold a better player in Jackson and brought in Delap. Pedro has more impressed me. I feel like both Delap and Pedro typically struggle without, um, a Pedro Neto on the side or an Esteval beating players, drawing in defenders without Cole Palmer behind them, who I think is great about drawing in defenses and making a smart pass out. Um, I feel like they really struggle without that support from midfield and wingers, and they didn't get that today. Cucurella and Gusto aren't bad fullbacks, but if they're your best width, like that is you know, that's a very defensive setup, as you said. Um, Last question, George. Tomorrow's game, do you feel like there is any chance that Newcastle away win?
no, no, no.
Okay.
I don't see the way Newcastle will go to Etihad and get victory against Manchester City because at this point, Manchester City they would approach that game with all seriousness because there is no guarantee they are going to win the Premier League because they are 6 points behind Arsenal. So one of the trophies they might at least stand a chance of winning is the Carabao Cup. So I'm sure they will approach that game with all seriousness and make sure they secure their spot in the final tomorrow. I don't see Newcastle overturning the tie. I think this tie has been sorted out in the first leg, just like the
Yeah.
Chelsea Arsenal game. From the first leg, I knew it's going to be Arsenal Manchester City final, which I
It'll be
think
an
will be a
interesting
very
fight.
interesting final.
Yeah, I mean, 2-0, losing a 2-goal deficit away, similar to what I was saying, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City is a better team. I do feel like Pep Guardiola is probably a better manager than Eddie Howe. Um, Newcastle, though, they have talent. They absolutely can beat anybody, but winning by 2+ goals at Etihad is a tall task. I'm with you. I feel like it's a very, very, very slim chance.
Yes.
for Newcastle. Very uphill battle, and Pep is taken this competition very seriously in the past, and he's won it what 6 times, 5 times in 10 years, something like that. So, this would be a great opportunity for him to win that one more time. All right, to close out today's show, just some questions for our viewers. Number one, do you think Rosenier was too conservative with his gameplay, with his substitutions? Let us know your thoughts. Is there any chance that Newcastle overcome that deficit tomorrow? We'd love to see it. It'd be exciting for a neutral, but very tall order. And was that a penalty for Chalobah on Martinelli? Let us know your thoughts. Please respond to whatever platform you follow. Appreciate the listen. Have a good afternoon.